I'm going to erase my number here. All right, so let's say we're looking at completing the square problem, and the problem isn't asking you to finish completing the square. The problem is asking you, what do you add to both sides if you were going to complete the square? So to figure that out, you have to make sure there's no number in front of x squared. So there's not, so we're good here. I don't have to do step 1 of completing the square. Step 2, and I'm just going to notate step 1, there's nothing there, so I don't action it. Step 2, and if you don't have my handout, please email me for the handout with the steps. Step 2 says to take the number in front of x, which in this problem is 8, and divide it by 2. And that gives me 4. Step 3 says to take what you get from step 2 and square it. This is what you would add to both sides. So I would do x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 12 plus 16. So if the question is asking me, I stop here and I say 16 is the value. And again, you're going to arrive at 16 because step 2 in the process is to take whatever number is in front of x and divide it by 2. Step 3 is to take that number and square it. So you want to be sure that you're following those steps to figure out what to add. Now, I'm just going to finish this problem out so you can see how we would solve completing the square. So the way that we solve it is, again, in that step file. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add 12 and 16 so that that's done. Now, there is a tip in the step document that shows you how to figure out what goes in the parentheses. So in the step document, I say go back to step 2, which is up here. And if you're back in step 2, that is the number that goes in the parentheses. So this piece from step 2 is what's going there. Now, the sign of it, if this is a positive number, then it's going to be a positive sign in the parentheses. Okay? So that's how I'm determining this is now the equation for completing the square. So I have the number I would add, I have the equation that I would get, and then I can solve it. And so what I would do to solve this is I would take the square root of both sides, because the square root is what gets rid of that exponent. And then I have to simplify the radical. So 28 is divisible by 4. So 28 is the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. And then I still have my x plus 4 hanging out. Now we know the square root of 4 is 2. So on this side, I have 2 square root of 7. Then I have x plus 4. I don't actually need the parentheses. And then to solve, oops, I also have plus or minus from doing the square root. To solve it, I would just subtract from both sides. And so my answer looks a little funky, right? Like that's not a beautiful, nice, pretty algebraic answer, but it is the answer. And so in completing the square, you'll either get a whole number or you're going to get something that looks awful. And that's kind of how you can think about it, is it's going to be one thing or the other. It's never going to be something that's really nice. So that's a look at completing the square. And the next video, I'll cover what to do when there's a number in front of x squared.